My name is Sarah Oremland, and I'm a senior consultant at GrowthPlay on our organization effectiveness and talent consulting team. I've been with GrowthPlay for 3 years, and my background actually started in sales and sales management in the software as a service industry. And then I pivoted and received my master's in clinical social work, knowing that I wanted to combine sales, human behavior, and psychology. And now in my current role, I consider myself extremely lucky to be able to leverage all 3 aspects in my work to help organizations and leaders align their talent and strategies in order to drive revenue growth.
And good morning, everyone. This is Barocio, and I'm a principal consultant with GrowthPlay. I've been a member of the GrowthPlay team for 2 years now, and prior to joining, I led the marketing and business development team of a mid-sized law firm based in Chicago. I love lawyers, and I've been working in the legal industry for 13 years in recruiting, professional development, marketing, and business development. When I'm not helping lawyers build relationships, you can typically find me at any local hockey rink playing hockey 3 days a week. And with that said, we are so excited to have you all join us for the first of GrowthPlay's 3-part webinar series, Play Your Position, the data on how lawyers sell, and the 6 business development roles. And we have 3 objectives for our program today. First, we're going to provide some context setting and introduce key sales insights that will set the stage for our conversation about talent analytics and the 6 business development role profiles. Secondly, we'll help you develop awareness about strengths-based selling fueled by the power of talent analytics. And finally, we'll introduce the 6 business development roles found in law firms and what you can do to support these attorneys given their innate and natural strengths. So get us going. For many of us, we are supporting our attorneys in a variety of ways, from helping them prepare RFPs and marketing materials to supporting them with client experience projects like client appreciation events, to supporting them in growing their books of business through business development coaching. And often in the coaching relationship and during the process, many of us begin by assessing and perhaps changing the mindset of our attorneys when it comes to business development. For so long, we haven't been able to say the word sales in our industry because lawyers went to law school to practice law and not to learn how to sell. And yet, we all know that in today's competitive marketplace, lawyers are true doer sellers. And if they want to take control of their careers, have freedom over where and when they spend their time and with whom, then they must embrace sales in a way that is genuine and authentic to them. To ensure your attorneys have the right mindset in approaching business development and sales, we're going to introduce 3 core philosophies that may give your attorneys a different perspective. First, business development is all about developing and nurturing authentic relationships. You can help your attorneys realize that it's not about being manipulative, twisting arms, or using people as a means to an end. It's all about seeking to make proactive investments in developing authentic relationships. Second, it's all about looking to provide the solutions to problems that should be solved. And I'll overemphasize for the attendees on today's webinar that that includes the ones your attorneys do not get paid for. This is a point that I often make in coaching because a default of our attorneys may be only to look out for the problems that they get paid to solve. And if we are truly seeking to develop authentic relationships, that means our attorneys will often be called upon to solve a wider range of problems, from offering suggestions for childcare to making a restaurant recommendation to just being a sounding board and a good listener before they have the opportunity to solve for a legal problem. And our third core philosophy is success will be determined as much by how your attorneys execute versus what they do tactically. And this philosophy is best highlighted in a networking example. Any attorney can go to an event to network, and I'm using the air quotes here, and come back with some business cards that will ultimately accumulate dust and sit in a pile waiting to be followed up on. And then there's that, and that becomes the tactical action of her business development. In comparison, another attorney can network by reviewing the attendee list in advance to identify specific people with whom she wants to meet and will email in advance of an event to introduce herself in an authentic way. Then when she shows up for the event, she has a game plan for execution, including a clear objective on why she's spending her time there and what she specifically wants to accomplish. She'll have questions prepared in advance so that when she meets the folks that she's reached out to in advance, she can initiate a conversation that serves the other person. She'll have key messages prepared in advance so that she can be a good participant in the conversation. And finally, she will seek and act to get a reason on why that person should want to authentically stay in relationship with her following that networking event. There's a distinct difference between the two scenarios in this networking example that I really think speaks to the essence of this third philosophy. Another important context setting concept is the buyer-seller's paradox. And in any buying scenario, there's this interesting dynamic playing out in the background. I want you, for the folks joined in with us today, I want you to think about the most recent consumer good that you purchased that cost at least 3 figures. For me, the image that comes to mind is a hockey stick. I fell in love with it, I had it in my hands, and I immediately started to think about all the ways this was going to improve my game. I looked at the curve of the blade and thought, oh, this is going to increase the snappiness of my backhand. I leaned on the flex of the shaft and I realized that I'm going to get more power on my snapshot. And I went through this justification of why I really needed to spend this money because I absolutely loved this hockey stick. And that's what tends to happen, is that buyers will buy emotionally and look to justify rationally. Versus sellers, typically our attorneys, are coming at it from the opposite perspective. They lead with benefits and features, the rational components of why a prospective client should engage them for legal help, and they tend to leave that emotional component to chance. You can help your lawyers remember what it's like to be on the buying side of the table and help them to increase their empathy awareness so that it will help to inform how they should think and act when it comes to selling and business development. So as a reminder for everyone, here's what business development looks like over the course of time. It starts off by helping your lawyers target well, i.e. where are they going to take up the marketplace and where are they going to put a stake in the ground and spend their time, to then immediately transitioning into the relationship building phase. Now that we have good informed targets, how are we going to seek to proactively invest and grow those relationships over time? If and when a prospect has a transitioning or a triggering event, if you will, that is when our attorneys can come in and start to learn more about the problem that they're facing. And if we do that well, we have the opportunity to engage in an early stage discovery conversation. And ultimately, we'll have the opportunity to close the business when we satisfy these 6 qualifiers, which we'll dig into a little deeper in just a moment. There are 3 common highlights that I wanted to point out to your attention. The first is one common pitfall we often see lawyers fall victim to is this concept of rushing to rejection. We help our lawyers target really well, and they immediately want to go to move to sales and execution. And that rushing to rejection concept occurs because we have totally bypassed relationship building, i.e. we haven't created conditions that allow our attorneys to form an authentic relationship, a trusting relationship with the target that they've identified, and they may not actually have a problem that our attorneys can solve. So that's why we call that rushing to rejection, and you would be best served to help them pump the brakes and get them to focus back in the relationship building phase. The second common pitfall we often see is folks get stuck in relationship building, i.e. they are trapped in the friend zone. You may see your lawyers come to you and say, man, I am taking so-and-so to baseball games, to basketball games. We have lunch every quarter. We have drinks in the evenings. Our families have met each other, and yet we have not been able to crack that nut and get that relationship out of the friend zone. There are some tactics that you will hear in today's program that you may be able to coach your lawyers on to encourage them to use a triggering moment or prompt a triggering moment that could help them get out of the friend zone. And finally, this will come as no surprise to any of our fantastic attendees on the line today, that lawyers just often give up too soon. that data shows us that most of our lawyers, if they don't get a positive response or an affirmed email or a lunch on the calendar within 2 tries, that they'll throw in the towel and they'll move on to the next target. Versus data that we see indicates to us that it's going to take 7 to 14 meaningful interactions before our attorneys have the chance to solve a legal problem. 7 to 14, hey, I saw this and I thought of you. 7 to 14, hi, how's your family doing? Or how did the college tour roadshow go? 7 to 14, hey, I want to pick your brain about this topic that I'm seeing trending in the private equity space. That level of persistence and patience is absolutely required for all of our attorneys in our lives. And depending on where you are in this business development process, certain strengths may be more effective to leverage in light of the activities associated to where an attorney is in this process. And we'll talk about that more in detail when we introduce the 6 business development roles. So what are those triggering events that occur that can help our lawyers engage into a conversation where their services might be required, or we can at least spur some interest with another person about the service and capabilities? It all starts off with this concept of the 4 C's. And the first C is concern. And that one is out of the control of our attorneys. That one is typically dictated by the prospect or an existing client who comes to us and says, hey, attorney X, I have this known problem. Or, hey, attorney Y, you know what? I've come to realize that we're not getting the level of service that I hope we would from our incumbent counsel, and therefore I want to learn more about what your firm has to offer. There are 3 other C's, however, that are firmly in the control zone of our attorneys. And the first one is curiosity. Curiosity occurs when your attorneys share a headline message that piques the listener's curiosity. You know, thinking about what's going on in our industry right now, GDPR is the greatest gift to all intellectual property attorneys for today. And so if your attorney says something to the effect of, hey, client or prospect, did you know that we have a diagnostic tool that helps you know how well prepared you are for GDPR, which goes in effect tomorrow? Would you like to take a test drive? That may pique the curiosity of the listener and get them enticed to want to try and precise this new assessment tool that you have, or allow for you to have a further conversation about what you and your firm is doing to help other clients prepare well for GDPR. The second C that our attorneys can control is confidence. Confidence occurs when your attorney shares an insight or tests the listener's confidence. For example, I'm counseling clients right now on ways to help them realize their real estate as a strategic element of their business in light of the changing tax reform. If I'm sitting in a position and I'm a business owner and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I haven't thought about my property in the context of how that could be advantageous from a tax perspective, you are testing my confidence about my ability to save as much money as I can. And if I'm a savvy business owner operator, that's definitely a topic that's going to test my confidence. And finally, the third C that our attorneys can control is this concept of connection. Connection occurs when your attorney taps into another person's desire to want to be connected to winners or to something that they don't want to miss out on. For example, if your lawyers are consciously and intentionally credentialing all the great work that is going on with their clients, like talking about the success of other clients, or creating conditions of demonstrating how your attorneys solve for the problems that should be solved, or examples of just being resourceful, helpful, and generous, that may tap into the other person's desire to not want to miss out on that, or to be associated to someone who's trustworthy, smart, getting the job done, and someone who wants to win. The final context-setting phenomena that we're going to talk about is this concept of the 6 qualifiers. So if your attorneys have navigated relationship building well, they've created this triggering moment, and they've moved through a successful sales process, they should only feel absolutely confident to ask for the business when they have the answers to these 6 qualifiers, which are, first, Your attorney and the prospect or even existing client have to be aligned on what is the problem, and further to that, what's the full scope of the problem. They also have to be aligned on, does the prospect or existing client feel that your attorney is providing the credible solution that they feel will fully address the problem at hand. Your attorney needs to know, does this prospect or existing client have a sense of urgency to solve for this problem right away? They also need to have access to all the decision makers in this process. There needs to be alignment between both parties when it comes to expectations on timeline, resources required to solve for this, staffing issues, etc. And the sixth and probably most important qualifier is the prospect or existing client has to feel confident that the financial justification, i.e. the price they're going to pay to solve for this problem, is justified. Oftentimes when I'm coaching other lawyers, I liken this concept to a marriage proposal. And for those of you who have joined us on the webinar today who have proposed to your significant other, I'm pretty confident that you wouldn't have asked your partner to marry you if you thought there was a slight chance that the other person would say no. And therefore, I often hearken back to this concept and say the similar mindset applies when asking for the business. So now that we've set the stage, I'm going to pass the baton to my colleague, Sarah Oremland, who will now talk about the power of talent analytics.
Thanks so much, Holly. So as you look at the words talent analytics, each of you might have a different perception of what that term actually means. So what exactly do we mean by talent analytics? It's a really good question, and it's a common question. So first, let's just talk about a definition. Not surprisingly, talent analytics simply means using data and analysis to inform decisions or shed light on questions about people. So when you're facing a talent decision like, who should I hire? Or have a talent question, so things like who's got the most natural capacity or natural tendencies to perform in a given role, you can either rely on your intuition or your subjective opinion, or you can use data and analysis to inform the decision and shed light on those questions. So talent analytics helps you inform decisions, not make them, and it helps you shed light on questions, not answer them. And interestingly enough, the average use of talent analytics in making talent management decisions is about 70 to 80% in corporations. And it's less than 10% in law firms. It's really not common at all, but we're seeing that trend change over time. So why use talent analytics to make a talent decision? First, when you think about making important talent decisions, you have to be able to identify, to objectively quantify what are the factors, the behaviors, the attributes, the motivations of a high performer in any given role. And we know through our 50 years of research that there are very specific competencies that differentiate high performers from low performers in specific new business development and client-facing roles. And these are statistically tied to success. So first, you need to develop a common language to even talk about these factors that predict success. And second, by utilizing data on your talent, it sheds light on the natural capabilities of the individuals in your firm. So who has the natural capacity or wiring? Who has the natural strength? Where do the gaps or areas of development lie? What is the natural makeup of the team I have now versus the team I may need in the future? And by understanding that, it becomes a catalyst to ask, well, do I have the right people in the right roles? Am I leveraging individual strengths and filling gaps? Do I need to think about teaming differently? And of course, how do I identify my future leaders? Who's got the natural tendencies to move up into a leadership role? How do we develop our talent to be able to continue to grow within our firm? How do we think about doing things differently in the future given our strategic objectives and goals? And of course, it's not only about developing the talent you have today, but helping to select the right candidates for tomorrow and for the future. So by understanding first the competencies that a person should have to be successful in a particular role, you want to ensure that you're hiring the right people who demonstrate these behaviors to fill open positions and continue to enable, develop, and retain that top talent. And finally, talent analytics helps you align your talent strategy with your firm's objectives and go-to-market strategy, not only in the short term, but in the long term. So as you all are well aware, as either lawyers or working to support lawyers, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution where it's actually feasible to train everyone to do everything. So everyone might be expected to look like the $5 million rainmaker, but we know that's frankly impossible given that everyone's not wired in the same way. And we also know that some individuals are fantastic at servicing existing clients, and others have that natural knack to go out and get new business. And then of course you've got administrative duties. It creates this constant tension or juggle to look at your priorities. And really, as you move up as an attorney, you're expected to do it all and to do it all well. And so firms are actually beginning to shift towards more of a team approach. So when you think about aligning people in best fit roles, we want to help lawyers leverage the best use of their natural skill set within the marketplace and within their firm. So law firms are really having to think through how to work differently, which of course plays into revenue generation, which is always a key priority. So what this graph points to is that by aligning people to the right roles, by leveraging their natural strengths within a firm through the use of talent analytics, it's been shown that there's a positive correlation to revenue generation. So on a very macro level, higher natural fit to a role is seen to reliably predict higher revenue and other KPIs. And of course, who doesn't want that? So what's interesting about the Growth Play proprietary assessment is that our assessment we utilize to capture all of this data. It's different from other assessments that you may have heard of or even taken in the past, like the Myers-Briggs, the DISC, the Hogan, the StrengthsFinder, all fantastic assessments when it comes to looking at personality features and communication styles. The difference between the Growth Play assessment and other more personality-based assessments is that we're pretty agnostic to somebody's personality. So while it's interesting if somebody's an extrovert versus an introvert or disciplined or competitive, what that doesn't tell you or what that doesn't answer is, does this person have the natural capacity or the wiring to be successful in a particular role, whether that be the $5 million rainmaker or someone who's incredible at growing and guarding existing clients. So if you think about it, if someone who's naturally wired as a hunter versus a farmer versus someone who's maybe great at cross-selling or upselling, they look distinctly different from one another. So this notion of measuring somebody's capacity is extremely important. And the Growth Play assessment gives us the ability to measure the probability that someone's going to be successful or exhibit those behaviors, the values, the motives that we know are predictive of success in very specific business development roles. So capacity is really the result of someone's raw or innate talent combined with their environment, like the tools, the training, the resources required to do the job well. And it remains relatively stable over time, whereas someone's performance on the other side may fluctuate. And as you all are well aware, a person's performance can be evaluated really differently based off of the role or the firm that they're in. Maybe how well are they managing their team? How much revenue are they bringing into the firm? How good of a culture fit are they? And it reflects a very specific point in time, whether you're being evaluated annually, biannually, monthly. So here's where the magic comes in. When you put capacity through the assessment together with somebody's performance, that's where we're able to find amazing correlations and predictions of success in specific new business development and client-facing roles.
Thanks, Sarah. So before we introduce the 6 business development roles, I'd like to set the stage by sharing some insights on what it's like to be a doer seller, i.e. our attorneys, and the challenges that present. So the dual burden of being a doer seller can be challenging for the following reasons. The first is, up to this point, lawyers haven't been known for their innate sales skills. And yet we know success requires that our attorneys have an ability to sell. The second is lawyers have the dual challenge of doing and selling. And for many of the attorneys that we serve, there's an internal conflict when it comes to striking the balance of billable and non-billable business development time. The third challenge is success in part is determined by the time invested, and the ability to sell is often predicted or predicated on how much time an attorney is willing to invest. And for those of us who have coached some tough nuts, we recognize the challenge of making business development a priority. The fourth is time invested does not typically produce immediate results. We know that attorneys tend to be risk adverse and perfection seeking, and therefore have a hesitancy to invest in new things that don't quickly produce success or an immediate return on gratification. The fifth is the lone wolf maker is a real thing of the past, meaning traditional approaches to development have limited success, meaning there's typically one mold that law firms have adopted when it came to business development, and that it can be universally applied to attorneys is a false that we are now seeing bear fruit. And finally, leveraging strengths in collaborative selling create greater strides. You know, we have seen the silent killer of entrepreneurial spirit, i.e. when attorneys only sell themselves and ultimately end up branding the firm in that way, inhibit cross-serving potential, and create business continuity issues for clients over the course of the long run. We, as business developers, marketers, and professional development folks, are in a position to help our attorneys leverage their strengths while managing their weaknesses through proper teaming and collaboration, which ultimately allows for them to sell the firm, including other qualified colleagues and their amazing capabilities, while our relationship partners or our number one attorneys get to build their personal brand in teaming and in the spirit of having a league of justice surrounding them. So that sets the stage nicely for our 6 business development roles. And I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, who's going to introduce the talent analytics component, and then I'll provide the color commentary on where these business development roles tend to show up in the hallways of our firm.
So we all love statistics, right? So I'm going to actually start with some stats from GrowthPlay's research on lawyers and professional services. We've actually found that over 98% of lawyers that we've assessed match at least one of the 6 business development roles, and 16% align with all 6 roles. So theoretically, a person could be well aligned to all 6 profiles. Again, it's only 16%. And the firms that we find that are really accelerating progress are helping each person figure out what is your superpower, and then purposely uniting them with others so that they create their own leagues of justice. So let's start with the first one. This is a new business developer. So when you imagine what a true rainmaker is, this is really the hunter. These individuals, in terms of, I'm going to talk more about what capabilities or competencies they have. So this person is very disciplined in prospecting. They invest the time to build and grow their networks, and they're always demonstrating the initiative to uncover sales opportunities. They're also very skilled in adjusting their approach to different buyers and different buyer motivations so that the essential information is gathered to determine what are the appropriate benefits or services that are very specific to that client or prospect's needs. These are also individuals who often you see taking the lead in social situations. They're comfortable meeting new people, they're comfortable starting the conversation, and they really enjoy that thrill of the hunt. In terms of the new business developer stats, from the study we did, we ran everyone in our professional services database against, again, all 6 role profiles. 10% of people were best aligned to the new business developer role, so not very high percentage. So what that says is that certainly everyone is not wired to be a true hunter, but for those that are, we should really be thinking about leveraging those qualities in their everyday role, as they're likely to lead with this type of behavior in their everyday interactions. And many people we find have untapped capacity to be a hunter that they might not be leveraging currently.
So an example that comes to my mind is that corporate partner who has the largest network, who comes back with new business following a lunch, or the person who says, hey, I'm going to this networking reception tonight, want to join me, and I'll help you navigate the room and introduce you to person A, person B, person C. Or maybe it's your private equity partner who enjoys the thrill of landing that elusive private equity guy in his network and will stop at nothing until he lands that whale. These are the folks you want to lean on in that targeting phase of the business development cycle that we introduced in the context setting portion of today's webinar. One other thing that I want to highlight is these folks also have a tendency, they have resiliency. So when things don't pan out, i.e. someone cancels lunch, they're not easily deterred. They just move on to the next target because they have that opportunistic nature about them. Here, as business development, marketing, and professional development folks, here are some do's that you can utilize to support the strengths of your new business developers. Do help them be audible ready to ensure that they have a good story to tell that will resonate with the buyer types in their key target markets. And do help them prospect well and keep them accountable by getting definitive next steps or seeking to find the authentic opportunities, continue the interactions and activities going forward. A couple of watch outs. Your new business developers may be easily distracted by new possibilities and opportunities, i.e. they may suffer from the shiny coin syndrome. So keep them focused on the strategic targets that we want them channeling their efforts and resources to. And finally, don't let them get stuck in the activities illusion, meaning they're investing lots of effort with little to show up for or to follow on. So help them prepare well with a specific plan of action, execution, and follow-up strategies to maximize their time and effort.
Okay, so while the new business developer is really thought of as the hunter, the client relationship developer is really thought of as more of the farmer. And we find that this is the most prominent match in firms. So actually 54% of the people we assessed were best matched to the client relationship developer profile. These are individuals that are great at expanding work. So if you know you have a natural strength here, you can really think strategically about how we can expand our work and possibly team up. These are individuals that constantly concentrate on generating revenue from established clients because they're intrinsically motivated that way. And they see this as a source of advancing their own career. They also tend to be individuals who work very collaboratively and understand that by forging close working relationships and alliances, you often get more done as a group than you would alone to accomplish a goal. They're committed to providing great client service and adding value by being seen as an educator, as a resource for clients. And they also regularly seek client feedback because they're always looking for ways to improve. So this person is also aware of not putting their own feelings first by staying very logical and objective when looking at issues that face their clients or prospects.
The example that comes to mind is that relationship partner who knows every personal and professional detail about her clients, from her client's birthday to her anniversary day, the work anniversary day, how her clients take her coffee to the company's 10K report like the back of her hand. These are the folks you want to lean on in defending and growing client relationships. So a couple of do's to help support their strengths. Help them leverage their strong relationships and access to insider information so that they can be on the lookout for new opportunities to solve for a wider range of problems. Do help them forge strong, genuine relationships with other colleagues from different practice areas so that they not only know enough about their practice and capabilities, but so that they also trust those folks right out the gate when they listen in for an opportunity that presents itself from an existing client relationship. They can feel confident introducing one of their colleagues because they naturally trust them and they'll naturally partner well together. A couple of watch outs. They may become the king or queen of his or her own fiefdom and therefore may fall into the trap that they can do it all themselves. And we all know that by introducing other more qualified experts into the relationship, ultimately the client is going to get the best outcome. And secondly, while Sarah highlighted that they have trusting and collaborative relationships with their clients, there may be a bit of an uneasiness in introducing others into that relationship because they are so closely tied to those client relationships, which is why it's an imperative for us to be the dot connectors for them and really encourage them to develop their own authentic relationships with their internal clients.
So the expander or the cross-seller is next. So this is the most obvious source of expanding work. Cross-selling is not always easy, even though it's sometimes the most obvious source of revenue growth. So this is a person that says, I see the potential to solve a greater reach of problems for my clients or my prospects. I see the opportunity to expand revenue to other lines of business. So individuals who score really high on the cross-selling profile will be able to see the potential that others often don't always see. And they connect the puzzle pieces and recognize that a client has a specific need broader than what's currently being worked on and helps to connect those dots. And they spend a lot of time in that needs analysis process in order to accommodate to that client or prospect's needs. And they don't force fit to an existing model. They're always invested in learning new skill areas. They stay in touch with market knowledge and competition, so they're always seen as a really valuable resource, both internally and externally. And by being a credible resource, trust and loyalty are built. And often because of that, cross-sellers are able to close business because they get the buyer to focus on the emotional rather than the logical benefits of the sale, just as Holly highlighted in the buyer-seller paradox. And this is also someone who's not afraid to think innovatively or creatively when it comes to continued solutions. And they perform best when they're in an environment that supports entrepreneurship and invention.
So these folks may be the ones within an existing client relationship who says, all right, I now see that this GDPR issue is going to be a problem for the existing client that I have, and therefore I'm going to link up with my fellow IP colleagues and make that introduction or look to introduce services or those audit protocols that may equip my client to prepare well for that event. I also have a different image that comes to mind, which is maybe it's your managing partner or one of the more senior statesmen within the four walls of your firm who knows every detail about past work and experiences and often say when in conversation, yeah, we've done that kind of work before. You should go talk to partner B in the DC office. They tend to be those elephant brain people who then use that institutional knowledge and look to connect the dots outwardly to help others and to help people facilitate introductions. These folks also know enough to be dangerous about the many services and capabilities of your firm, and therefore position themselves well to pique curiosity or test one's confidence enough to then bring in the real subject matter expert into the conversation. These folks are really helpful in creating those triggering events that we discussed at the top of our program, and as Sarah mentioned, can be vital in helping you close the business and satisfy those 6 qualifiers. Ways that you can support these cross-sellers. Do help them increase their knowledge base and form connections with colleagues within the firm, especially when you have new laterals or new hires that come into your firm. And encourage them to keep connecting the dots and making those introductions and connecting networks across and doing cross-pollination. Some watch-outs. Remember, help them deliver their offerings or their recommendations in a client-centric manner and not in a firm-centric manner. Being that they know all of those institutional details, you may be able to help them coach the way that they should not just sell rationally and leave the emotion to chance like the buyer-seller's paradox, but tailor it in a way that's going to be highly receptive to the listener on the other side.
And some of you may be wondering, well, how many people are best fit for this cross-seller role in our research? And actually only 4% of the individuals in our database that we've assessed that are in the professional services world are best fit to be a cross-seller. So not a very high percentage at all. Now the next role is the new service developer. 23% of people match best to the new service developer role. And as we know, in today's market, we really need to be thinking outside of the box. So this is the person that's motivated to do that. They think of new service offerings. Maybe it's a new product, maybe it's a new service, but it's really your innovator type. It's coming up with new ways to deliver services or create new services. So this is someone that invests extra time to develop their current skills while also building new skills because they're committed to increasing their professional development. They're not afraid to try the untested waters, and they take action so opportunities don't slip away. They're seen as extremely opportunistic, so where they can be spontaneous and flexible. And they tend to build trust through a very candid and kind of unguarded communication style. They're thought of as forward thinking because they explore new business solutions, functions, capabilities, and they often judge his or her own effectiveness by the originality or the creativity of an idea, and believe that being on the cutting edge is a competitive advantage not only for them, but also for their firm.
So these are the attorneys who are asking to attend lots of CLE programs and requesting Google alerts on blockchain from your research team, and may have asked to be certified in growing areas like cybersecurity and data privacy. They're the ones who are prototyping offerings and solutions and looking for any listening ear who are interested in what they're working on. These folks can be advantageous to lean on in developing new target markets and can also be clever insertions in creating triggering events during the sales process. Couple ways that you can help support them. Do support their intellectual curiosity and passion for creativity. That's ultimately going to fuel a lot of enthusiasm and create buzz within existing clients and generate new interest with potential clients. Do help them socialize what they're doing in ways that will allow for others to understand, especially if we're talking about some heavy-hitting technical capabilities. And encourage them to message what they're up to and why it would be interesting to the other contacts and clients across the firm. A couple of watch outs. Make sure that you help them align their passion with strategic areas of growth for the firm. For example, if the firm's strategic growth plan does not include breaking into the autonomous car space, then perhaps we need to steer their energy and enthusiasm in a different direction. And finally, new and innovative might be scary words for the skeptical or more conservative audiences. So make sure that their love for their own stuff doesn't impede their ability to communicate and connect well with non-innovation lovers.
Great point. Second to last, we've got the SME, or the subject matter expert. We often think of these individuals as the technicians. So this is someone who has deep knowledge in a particular area. These are really your specialists who know a lot about specific areas, but they're not your generalists who know a little bit about a wide net of topics. So someone who scores high as a subject matter expert is energized by digging deep into a specific area. And they do this by focusing on removing any barriers to their success. They're able to sort through the complexity, the red tape, the politics that we often see and focus on what is a required result. And in this way, they're able to anticipate those obstacles that could impede progress. And they tend to hold themselves to a very high personal standard. They're also a source of your valid, factual, unbiased information, and they build credibility through knowledge sharing. They proactively love to educate clients or prospects, but not just educate them, they make the information that they share extremely relevant. These are the individuals who I think of as extremely curious and enjoy learning. They have a strong desire to continuously improve upon their knowledge and skills because they see learning as really a key to building the skills that are essential for their career success. And again, you might be thinking, how many people or what percentage of individuals in our database score highest on the subject matter expert profile? It's 9% of people score this as a best match out of the 6 profiles.
The example that comes to my mind is I think of my former big brain attorneys when I was in-house. You know, the SALT lawyer who knew each state-by-state rules on all the local taxes, or the employee benefits specialist who knows the ERISA code like the back of her hand and then would crack acronym and section jokes with me in the hallways. These are the folks who can help in the sales execution process, i.e. they're very skilled in helping clients educate, and that can be advantageous when you're in the sales process. as well as helping to satisfy those 6 qualifiers, i.e. providing the roadmap on how they are going to help solve for the problem and what are the resources required or necessary steps that you're going to have to take to solve for that problem. Do encourage them to spread the gospel of what they know and how they can help through educational programming, being that they're natural teachers. And also help them foster relationships with other colleagues where maybe some of their big braininess may get in the way of finding that authentic reason to connect. A watch out. Help them phrase their complex and sophisticated knowledge in a way that can be relatable and understood both by clients as well as internal colleagues.
Great. And finally, the player coach, which we also think of as the leader. I bet you all have seen this. I certainly have in my career, where it's the classic sales promotion mistake is happening at your firms, where you promote your best business development person to manage people. And in fact, research states that 82% of people in a management, specifically sales management position, don't actually have the required skills, and they're not motivated to coach others. So this is somebody that embraces a strategic vision and a group strategy by aligning closely with the firm's mission, and they understand the need to communicate and sell ideas in order to gain support and commitment from their team. They inspire teamwork and accountability, and they gain followers by being somebody that is easy to follow. And a person that's well aligned to the player coach role has a strong desire to make others feel heard and feel good. They're seen as very motivating in that way. And finally, the player coach becomes the champion of key ideas and new developments that support or advance organizational objectives. And they do this by taking the lead in changing the present status. While not promoting change for the sake of change, they're more concerned with preventing missed opportunities than with the possibility of failing or breaking tradition.
So these are the attorneys that are the ones who naturally acknowledge the good work and accomplishments of others. They are the attorneys who are always willing to offer their perspective, help, and guidance. They're the attorneys who will check in with others unprompted, and attorneys who will help connect the dots between individual efforts and what's going on across the firm. So these are the folks who actually can be very helpful throughout the entire business development process. So a couple of do's. Do encourage your firm to recognize the competencies and benchmarks tied to firm leadership and the potential people who could be successful in those roles. Do support your player coach by acknowledging their contributions to others, and encourage others to connect with this player coach. A couple of watch outs. Be on the lookout for burnout. If they are constantly in a position of giving and not getting, that we may be able to fill that gap and be their best cheerleader and then reinforce the fact that we are sharing the gospel of what they're doing with other key leaders within our firm. And also, the final watch out is look out for opportunities to measure and acknowledge the contributions they make to others when traditional metrics, i.e. leadership titles or even compensation, don't account for all the positive work that they're doing for others.
So now we are going to open it up to questions. I saw one question come through social media, and that question is, can you map to 2 or more roles, and is this common? I'll take this question. So yes, you actually can match to 2 or more roles. We actually see that 19% of people match to 2 or more roles from our research. And then the other question was, do you see outliers, people who do not match up to the results? Not often, but through the research that we have gotten, actually 1.7% of people don't match to either of the 6 roles or any of the 6 roles. And so while it's not often, you do get the outliers who may not be a good fit for any of the 6 new business development roles.
Another question that we have is, how does a report or a readout like this inform coaching? And I'll take that one, Sarah. The way that I've used our talent analytics reports helps me, one, utilize their strengths tied to specific activities in the business development cycle. And just like Sarah mentioned at the top of our program, it sheds insights and brings awareness to each coachee that I'm working with that they have these innate strengths. And so being that we're typically dealing with attorneys where this is new information to them, i.e. here is the specific ways that you can be great at business development, I then bring that awareness, and then that helps us guide where we can leverage those strengths in building relationships with key people within their target market, and also allows for me, especially if I'm working with a group setting, to connect the dots to leverage cross strengths with different players so that I can put them together and form alliances or co-marketing collaborators, if you will, where their strengths can be leveraged and they can go out and bolster one another in business development.
Great. We got the question, what % of people are the player coach? Really great question. We see that it's under 15%. It's actually about 12%. And that actually aligns with the research that Gallup did on their sales management and sales leaders, where about 82% of people don't match to a manager or a player coach role, and only 12% do.
Another question that we received is, who should be making these decisions, the attorneys for their teams or the clients with regard to business development? And the answer is, it really needs to be a collaborative process. Like we said, this talent analytics is not intended to actually help you make decisions. It's ultimately to help you inform decisions. So therefore, if you are assessing your attorneys, you may want to, one, bring this awareness to your attorneys that sheds light on what are their innate strengths, and then work with members of the business development team to figure out where those strengths are best deployed.
We also got a question, what kind of compensation arrangements can you suggest or imagine that might adequately incentivize and reward each group? So this is probably a much bigger and more in-depth conversation, and it really depends on kind of the key performance indicators that each firm sets up specifically for each type of role. Generally speaking, new business developers are incentivized or feel energized by closing business. And so therefore, it generally is set up where they receive a commission or a bonus for reaching specific targets. Client relationship developers or your farmers generally have maybe a base salary, but also are incentivized for developing and growing and guarding existing clients. So there's often KPIs around growing and guarding. And then so on for cross-selling and upselling, new service development, subject matter expert. These are individuals who are often brought into a deal to play a specific role. And so I can see compensation really working around when and if they close business using their expertise. This is how they would be incentivized, either receiving a bonus of some sort or commission. But again, this is really dependent on the firm and kind of the objectives of the firm going forward.
For some of the firms that have switched to more of a profitability compensation structure, there may be somewhere in the formula where repeat client business is a factor in that compensation evaluation. Just like there's cross-selling credit that can creep into the compensation formula. So we've seen it happen in a variety of ways, or sometimes it's in a straight bonus and it's tied to other firm-related competencies if a firm has a competency and a benchmarking compensation system. Well, fantastic questions. We are going to take a two seconds to check Twitter to ensure that we've captured all the questions that were asked on today's program.
And for any questions that come in afterwards, we'll also be able to answer them at a later time.
Well, fantastic, everyone. So we are so thankful to have you all on today's webinar. And we just want to say thank you so much for attending. And here's what to expect. Everyone will receive a copy of the recording from this presentation shortly following today's webinar. And please be sure to be on the lookout for our future webinars. Coming up on June 28th, we have Be a Team Player, How Lawyers Can Collaborate and Team for More Effective Business Development Efforts with our fabulous Tasneem Koka. And then our final series webinar is going to be held on July 26th, and that is Fueling Performance and Potential, How Lawyers Can Adapt to Change and Stay Competitive in the Innovation Economy with Deborah Baker. On behalf of Sarah and myself, thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar, and we hope to see you on our future webinar on June 28th. Take care, everyone.